Texas. Just a name alone makes most people immediately think of cowboys, endless oil wells, gigantic farms, and modern cities like Dallas or Houston. But what if all of that is just the surface? What if the true history of Texas is not on the surface, but buried deep beneath it? Hidden beneath the second largest state in the United States is a completely different world. Gigantic caves formed by nature millions of years ago, underground rivers still quietly flowing beneath the feet of millions of residents and once thriving towns. But now, only a few crumbling walls remain, along with the sound of the wind blowing through the deserted streets. This is not the story of Texas you usually see on the tourist map. This is a journey to discover a forgotten Texas, where the deeper you dig, the more you realize that the most famous state in America still holds many untold secrets. Texas. Just mentioning that name, many people will immediately picture endless prairies, oil wells, cowboys riding horses, or rapidly developing cities. But after spending time exploring this place, I realized something interesting. Texas is actually not built on the surface as we usually think. Texas is built on an entire world beneath the ground. Imagine if someone could slice the state of Texas in half like cutting a multi-layered cake. You would not only see soil and rock. Right below is a massive labyrinth of limestone, underground rivers, aquifers, and thousands of caves interconnected in ways that humans have yet to fully explore. The Texas Hill Country region lies above the Edwards Aquifer, one of the most important groundwater systems in the United States, providing drinking water for over 2 million people and sustaining many of the state's famous rivers. Interestingly, most of that water flows through limestone, completely hidden from view. Perhaps that's why Texas has more than 10,000 recorded caves, more than most states in the U.S. But that number may not be the limit. Explorers continuously discover new cave branches every year, as if the Texas underground is still holding back its unread chapters. And this is what really surprises me. When standing in the middle of an ordinary field, it's hard to realize that just a few dozen meters below could be a gigantic stone hall. The drops of water have patiently dripped down for millions of years, bit by bit creating stalagmites as tall as a multi-story building. Meanwhile, up above, towns rise and fall, railroads change direction, and people come and go. Nature seems to be in no hurry. It quietly continues its work as it has done since before the dinosaurs appeared. There's a question I want to ask you. If it weren't for these limestone layers and underground rivers, would Texas have become the powerful state it is today? Or is it what lies beneath the ground that truly forms the foundation of everything above? If you also enjoy exploring stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Ahead, we will not only look at the map of Texas, but also step into places where very few people have ever set foot. And if the underground world has already changed your perspective on Texas, then what remains on the surface, the towns that were once bustling and have now been forgotten by time, will tell an even stranger story. Let's move on to the next stop. If there is a place that completely changed my perspective on Texas, it is not a big city or an endless field. But it was the moment of stepping underground, where the sunlight gradually disappeared and silence began to speak. At that moment, I understood that some of the greatest cathedrals in the world were never built with bricks or concrete. They are made of water, stone, and time. One of the most special places is Natural Bridge Caverns. Just descend about 55 meters underground, and you will step into an incredibly vast space. The stalactites hang down from the cave ceiling like gigantic chandeliers, while the stalagmites silently rise from the ground like rows of columns supporting the sky. The astonishing thing is that all of it is formed drop by drop. A drop of water falls, leaving behind a thin layer of almost invisible minerals. Then another drop, and so it went on, for hundreds of thousands of years. Inside the cave, the temperature is almost always around 21 degrees Celsius, regardless of whether it's a summer day in Texas with over 40 degrees or the rare cold days of winter. That feeling is very strange. Just a few dozen meters above the ground, you feel like you've stepped into another world where time flows much slower than the bustling life above. Not far from there is Hamilton Pool Preserve, a place that makes many first-time visitors think they are in Iceland or Mexico, not Texas. In fact, this emerald green lake is the remnant of a limestone cave that collapsed thousands of years ago. The waterfall, soft as a silk curtain, cascades down into the lake, while ancient ferns cling to the cliffs, creating the feeling of stepping into a prehistoric forest. To protect this fragile ecosystem, the number of visitors each day is limited through a reservation system. But what I find most thought-provoking lies in a very small detail. Geologists say that many stalagmites in the caves of Texas only grow along hundreds of thousands of years to form, about an inch after nearly a centenary, meaning that the several meter high columns we are looking at took hundreds of thousands of years to form. Try to imagine that. In the time it takes nature to build a stone pillar, humans have managed to construct and then destroy countless cities, transforming numerous civilizations. We often take pride in structures that are 100 years old, but beneath the ground in Texas lie sanctuaries whose ages far exceed the history of mankind. Perhaps that's why, standing amidst those spaces, I don't feel like I'm visiting a tourist attraction. It feels more like stepping into a living museum of time. What do you think? If given the choice, would you prefer to visit a famous building constructed by humans, or a cathedral that nature has patiently shaped over millions of years? Please share your opinion in the comments section. And if you enjoy the journey of exploring the lesser-known corners of America, don't forget to like and subscribe, because there are even more exciting things ahead. Because after witnessing the masterpieces created by nature underground, we will return to the surface to encounter other human masterpieces, towns that were once bustling, once full of hope, but then quietly erased from the map by time. It is there that another chapter in the mysterious story of Texas truly begins. There is something very interesting about Texas. This state is famous for its ever-expanding cities, but if you venture away from the highways for a few minutes, you will start to see a completely different Texas. The quiet streets, the weathered wooden shops, the train stations with no more arrivals. The first feeling is not fear, but tranquility, a silence that makes you feel as if time has inadvertently forgotten this place. Throughout Texas, there are hundreds of ghost towns and communities that have nearly vanished from the map. Some places were once built around a silver mine, a coal mine, or an oil well. Some places only exist because a railroad line passes through. But then one day, the mine runs dry, oil prices drop, or the tracks are rerouted. Just one decision on the map is enough to make an entire town lose its reason to exist. The young people left first, the school closed later, and then the shops, church, and post office gradually locked their doors. All that remains are the empty houses standing silently in the meadow, as if waiting for someone to return. I once felt very strange standing in a town like that. No sound of cars, no sound of people. Only the sound of the wind passing through the window panes that have lost their glass. On the old wall, the sign with the store's name still hangs, as if the owner just left yesterday. But in reality, there are places that have not had permanent residents for decades. What makes me think is not the desolation, but the fact that this place was once the dream of many families. What is even more surprising is that not all of these towns died due to natural disasters or wars. Many places simply lost their purpose. For example, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Texas boomed with railroads and mining. There were towns that saw their populations surge in just a few years, with thousands flocking in with hopes of a better life. But when the railroad changes direction or the industry moves elsewhere, the rate of disappearance is just as rapid. There were communities that once had banks, hotels, theaters, and schools, but after just 1 or 2 decades, all that remains are foundations overgrown with weeds. Looking at old photos placed next to the present scene, you will feel like you are looking at 2 different worlds. Perhaps this is not only true for Texas. It's just like many stories in life. We often think a big city will last forever, but history shows that no place is immune to change. In your opinion, what determines the fate of a town? Resources, people, or simply its location on a route? Leave your thoughts in the comments section. And if you enjoy the way we explore the lesser-told stories of America, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss our next journeys. But the forgotten towns are only half the story, because the very thing that once brought wealth to Texas, oil, is also the reason many communities were born, then quietly disappeared. In the next section, we will explore that paradox. Oil created modern Texas, but it also buried much of yesterday's Texas. If the caves tell the story of millions of years of nature's formation, then oil tells the story of human ambition. And perhaps nowhere in America is this more evident than in Texas. In 1901, in the small town of Spindletop, a geyser of oil shot up into the sky, marking the beginning of the largest oil boom in Texas history. In a short period, tens of thousands of people from all over the United States flocked there with the same dream, to change their lives overnight. The empty fields quickly transformed into densely populated residential areas. Hotels sprang up, shops opened day and night. The sounds of hammers, trains, and drills blended together like a symphony of the boom period. There are places that were once meadows yesterday, but today have banks, schools, cinemas, and thousands of residents. They call them boom towns, towns born from oil. They developed so quickly that sometimes the maps couldn't keep up. But then I realized something quite sad. Not everyone who comes to Texas finds their dream. Oil is like the tide. When it rises, it brings opportunities, wealth, and hope. But when it recedes, it takes everything with it. Just one oil field running dry, a drop in oil prices, or companies moving to other areas, and an entire community can lose its livelihood in just a few years. The once brightly lit streets have fallen silent. The barber shop, the eatery, the theater, and even the school gradually closed down. In the end, only the old oil wells stood silent in the wind like clocks that had stopped ticking. What surprised me the most is that many ghost towns in Texas did not disappear due to war or natural disasters. They were simply left behind when the economy shifted. According to local historical research organizations, Texas once had hundreds of communities that declined or disappeared after the cycles of oil, mining, and railroad exploitation. There were places that once attracted thousands of workers each week, but a few decades later, the population dwindled to just a few dozen people, or even none at all. If viewed from above, you can still see the neatly planned streets, but they resemble the skeleton of a city more than a place still alive. Interestingly, that paradox still exists in Texas today. This state currently produces about 43% of the entire United States' oil output, more than any other state. It is the underground resources that have contributed to making Texas one of the largest economies in the world. But it is also beneath that ground where countless destinies have been written and then quietly closed. In your opinion, is oil a gift from nature or just a fleeting opportunity that humans must learn to use wisely? I would love to read your perspective in the comments. And if you enjoy our perspective on Texas through the untold stories, please like and subscribe to continue this journey with us, because the most exciting part is still ahead. Because after the forgotten towns and the oil booms, we will uncover an even greater truth. What truly determines the fate of Texas does not lie on the surface, but rather what is buried deep beneath it. This is also when the entire story begins to connect with each other. At this point, you might also start to notice a very interesting pattern. The caves we just explored, the towns that once disappeared, or even the oil booms that changed the course of American history. They all share a common starting point. They didn't start on the surface. They start from what lies beneath it. That might be what makes Texas different. In many places, people decide where to build cities. But in Texas, many major cities were chosen for their locations tens of millions of years ago, long before humans appeared. Look at the map. Austin developed along the limestone region and a vast underground water system. Houston has risen to become the energy capital due to its proximity to the coast and direct connections to offshore and onshore oil and natural gas fields. The Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area, on the other hand, developed strongly due to its proximity to large resource regions and became an ideal intersection for rail, road, and later air transport. When looking at each city individually, everything seems to be just natural development. But when you connect them all together, you will see a different picture. Geology had drawn the economic map of Texas long before humans picked up a pen. That also explains why Texas is not only rich in oil, but also in groundwater. The Edwards Aquifer system and many other aquifers quietly provide water for millions of residents, agriculture, and even the state's famous rivers. The limestone layers not only create beautiful caves, but also function as gigantic natural reservoirs. If we compare Texas to a living organism, the aquifers would be the blood vessels, and the limestone layers would be the skeleton supporting everything above. And then there's a detail that I think is worth pausing for a few seconds. At the beginning of the 21st century, it was precisely from the deep rock layers that seemed to be depleted that fracking technology opened up a new energy revolution. The shale layers, once considered worthless, suddenly became a massive source of oil and natural gas. Thanks to that, Texas currently contributes about 43% of the oil production and about 25% of the natural gas in the entire United States. If we imagine that amount of oil being stored in tank trucks lined up, the convoy would stretch for thousands of kilometers. But the most interesting thing is, all those resources have been lying underground for hundreds of millions of years. Humans did not create them. People only learn how to find them. That was the reveal that changed my perspective on Texas. We often praise the skyscrapers in Houston, the tech hubs in Austin, or the prosperity of Dallas. But in reality, those symbols are just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath them are limestone, fossils, groundwater, oil, and natural gas, geological layers that quietly determine where cities will be, where railroads will be, where economic booms will occur. In other words, the history of Texas is not primarily written by humans, but by geology. There's a question I really want to ask you. If tomorrow all the oil underground disappears, will Texas still be the Texas we know today? Or is it nature itself that is the true architect of this state, with humans merely coming later to read the continuation of that design? If you also find this journey increasingly interesting, please hit like and subscribe. That not only helps the channel grow, but also lets me know you want to continue exploring the lesser-known perspectives on America. And when we understand that everything above is shaped by what lies beneath, we will reach the final part of the journey. There. The story will no longer be just about Texas, but about how time, nature, and people together create the identity of one of the most special lands in America. After everything we've been through, I think the most memorable thing about Texas is not its size. What makes this land much more special is its depth. Not only the depth of the caves or the layers of rock beneath the ground, but also the depth of time, of history, and of the stories that have quietly shaped America. Perhaps this is also the reason why every time I return to Texas, I always feel like I'm meeting a very different person. The first time, you only see the surface. Cowboy hats, fields stretching to the horizon, oil wells, pickup trucks, and the smell of BBQ. But the longer you stay, the further you go from the big cities, the more you realize that is just the most visible layer. The next layer is the towns forgotten by time. Places once filled with laughter, the sounds of trains, the clanging of hammers in mechanical workshops, gradually sinking into silence as people moved on to other places. And deeper still are the dark caves, the underground rivers, the fossils of an ancient ocean that once covered this land hundreds of millions of years ago. Each layer is like a page of a book. Only by turning enough pages can you understand the whole story. What I find interesting is that people often say Texas was built by pioneers, cowboys, or the oil industry. That's true, but not enough. Because if we look at it from a geological perspective, it is nature that laid the first stone. The limestone layers create a water source. The sedimentary layers store oil and natural gas. The wide plains determine where the railroad passes. Many of human choices are actually just reactions to what nature has long prepared. And this is perhaps the detail that makes me think the most. When standing in a cave in Texas, you will see a stalagmite several meters high. Scientists believe that to create such structures, nature needs hundreds of thousands, even millions of years. In the same period of time, how many civilizations have appeared and then disappeared? How many cities have been built and then destroyed? A town can boom thanks to oil in a few years and quietly disappear after a few decades. But that cave remains there, continuing to grow by millimeters, as if nature's time operates on a completely different clock than that of humans. Perhaps that is the greatest secret of Texas. Not a buried treasure, nor a thrilling legend, but it is this state that always reminds us that all human achievements are built on a much older foundation. We see the buildings, but rarely think about the layer of stone beneath. We remember the names of cities, but forget the towns that disappeared to make way for them. We talk about the present, while the Earth's core still holds the memories of millions of years ago. So, in your opinion, what truly defines Texas? Is it the skyscrapers in Houston, the vast farms, or the caves and geological layers that existed long before humans set foot here? I would love to hear your perspective, as each person might have a different answer. And as we conclude today's journey, perhaps the most memorable thing is not how many caves or abandoned towns we have passed through. What is memorable is that we have learned to look at Texas with slower, deeper, and more respectful eyes. Because sometimes the most important things about a land do not lie on the surface, but quietly await discovery in the deepest layers of history. Texas is often remembered for its cowboy hats, oil wells, and ever-growing cities. But after today's journey, perhaps we will remember this place in a different way. A land where each layer of rock holds a part of history, each cave bears the marks of time, and each forgotten town reminds us that nothing lasts forever. Perhaps the most mysterious thing about Texas lies not in what still exists, but in what quietly remains underground, waiting for someone to stop and listen to its story. I would really like to know your thoughts. If you had the chance to explore Texas, would you choose to step into a million-year-old cave or visit a town forgotten by time? Please share your choice and the reason in the comments, as your story might become the inspiration for the next video. If you love exploring America from perspectives that few people share, don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss the upcoming episodes. Thank you for accompanying me until the end of the video. See you in the next exploration. The video is made with the purpose of sharing knowledge, exploring history, geography, and culture based on publicly available and reliable sources at the time of production. Some historical details or figures may change according to research, with safety being the top priority.